Okay. Welcome everybody to the Catalyzing Change Week session, and it is the world's largest virtual event to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and accelerate collaborative system change. Before we move on with today's session, please drop in the chat who you are and where you are logging from the world today, and what are you hoping to gain from the conversation. And let us go through this introduction video about Catalyzing Change Week. So today's session is entitled Accelerating Fashion Forward, Building a Collaborative Ecosystem. And we welcome Camila Sanders from Greater Than Equal as our esteemed host. And Greater Than Equal amplifies the voice and supports organizations that be the voice for marginalized communities through multiple communication channels, such as art, photography, and storytelling. And one of the pillars of Greater Than Equal is to advocate for sustainable fashion. And that's why we're here today. And welcome, Camila, and thanks everyone for your presence. Over to you, Camila.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm going to go straight into it. I am, because that was such a lovely introduction, I don't have to say any more, I don't think, and we do have limited time. So in this session, we are going to, and it's very interactive, this session will be, so we'll do breakouts because it's really not about me. I'm not necessarily speaking about anything. It's more about your ideals and your thoughts and developing this together. And so that's what this session will be about. I will give a brief introduction to what we're talking about here. And we'll go into these different breakout sessions that are kind of like a mini design thinking process. And then we'll have some group discussions within it. And if you're interested in continuing to build this platform and working on this issue, there's a link that was just put in the chat. You can fill out your information there and drop your email there. And then we'll also notify you the next workshops that we do. And within Catalyst, I am actually one of the leads for this sustainable fashion collaboration. I've been with Catalyst for about 4 years now. So so this is, what I work on most of my time. So you can go to the next slide. So the issue that we're addressing today is the lack of sustainability and ethics in the fashion industry. So the fashion industry has an issue with not being kind to the earth or people. So, and if you want more information about that particular issue, I would love to have a conversation with you, or you can join the Sustainable Fashion collaboration. I'm coming with, or everyone's kind of coming with the assumption that we all agree that there is this issue to be addressed. And some of you may or may not know that much about the issue, and that's okay. But basically, we have these large brands that are very resourced. We have fast fashion that is overproducing, and they're damaging the environment. There's lots of social issues within the fashion industry, but we also have, and these actually are these are from the Sustainable Fashion Collaboration, which you're reading here. But we also have these small to medium enterprises or even micro that are not resourced and they want to be ethical and sustainable, but maybe they don't have the connections to like manufacturers or other designers that are being sustainable and ethical, right? And so how do we get resources to these smaller organizations? It could be an organization, it could be someone within the industry that is having these issues. And so that's the problem. And so you can go to the next slide. The solution, and this is pretty broad that we're focusing on today, is building a platform. So this is, and it's very general because we're building this together, right? So if we were to build a platform, say like a tech platform, what would it have in it, right? And so that's a question that we're asking today, is that if we're building a platform to help make the fashion industry more sustainable, more ethical, give people resources, whether it's connecting people to someone that already knows like how to source sustainable materials, or they want to join forces and maybe promote themselves, or get access to market or those different things, what would this platform look like? And so that is where you come in to help to ideate some of these things. And if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to like just put them in the chat. So you can go to the next slide. Okay. So one of the things, and this is a question for the entire group just to get you thinking, like who are the major actors in the fashion industry? And if you could put this in the chat, like say, for example, and when I say actors, I mean like if you think about the fashion industry supply chain, or you think about where your clothes come from, who had a part in that? So if you want, you can, put it in the chat. So for example, manufacturers, right? Or maybe like designers, people that are designing the clothes. Or yeah, factories. So the factories, the retailers, right? Retailers. I'm joining in the discussion too in the chat. So any other thoughts? Even a lot of people don't think about it, but also if you're thinking about, okay, consumers too, right? Obviously, because we all wear clothes, or most of us wear clothes. But also maybe, so I talked about retailers, and then a lot of people don't think about it, but also like farmers, right? Because the textiles that our clothes come from, right? So anyone that's producing these different textiles, right? Yeah. So we don't associate that a lot, but our clothes are made out of cotton or other materials. Or you could say the oil industry, right? Because a lot of times our clothes are made out of plastic. Okay, this is great. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So this what we'll do, we're gonna focus on one specific persona in the fashion industry. So we're going to focus on designers, right? And so if you think about a designer, this is someone that is creating clothing, right? And somewhat of an artist, right? We call designers artisans, right? Because they're creating a piece of clothing. And so they have to decide where they're going to source their materials. They have to decide who's going to manufacture their material, the clothing, right? Once they make that design, they have to send it off to a manufacturer. Is the manufacturer have, sustainable practices? Who is the retailer? Like they have all these decisions that they have to make. So I want you to think from a designer perspective, right? And so I want you to answer these different questions and say, who is a designer? And that means get a detailed, you can make this up, of course, like, or if you're a designer, you can use yourself. So say, for example, you might say, well, this designer is based out of India and they just started their brand and they started a nonprofit organization and they want to have people give their clothes that are used and they want to create new clothes out of those. And so you're formulating who is this person that you're building this platform for, right? So once you have who the designer is, then think about, okay, what are their problems that they want to solve? Well, maybe they need access to people that that want to bring in their clothes, or maybe they need additional people to help to manufacture or sew the clothes, right? Or maybe they need to process the clothes. And then why do they want to solve this problem? So why is it important to them? Maybe they're bringing a livelihood for them and their family or their community. What is that reason um, why they want to actually address this issue? And so we're going to do 10-minute breakouts, and so you can answer these questions, and feel free, like during the breakout, of course, give a brief introduction to who you are. And then one person, if you could keep the time, and then another person to take notes. And then those notes that you are taking, that will be put in the chat when you come back. So if you have any questions, let us know, but we'll put the questions in the chat, and we'll do 10 minutes, two people per breakout room. Okay, welcome back, everyone.
Mila, we could just talk about this endlessly. I feel like you could have given us 10 more minutes. Been deep into the conversation.
This is like a teaser session, I think. I think that's what it is. It's kind of a teaser, because this could be actually an entire day. We could spend actually weeks in doing this. But I would love, if anyone took notes in your session, if you could drop that in the chat so we have a record of that, of your discussion. And if you think of anything else that you want to put in the chat about your discussion that you had, please feel free to put it in the chat. And I would love one person from each of the breakouts to talk about just a couple minutes of, like, who was your designer? What are some of the problems that they're faced, and why do they want to solve the problem? So just one person from each breakout.
Our group, Maria, in our group, she has a very interesting project. So I think, Maria, would you mind to tell everyone what we discussed?
Yes. Hi, nice to meet you. So yeah, I basically presented something I'm working with currently. I am based in Lesbos. It's an island in Greece, and I work in the refugee context, and I'm the head of mission for this nonprofit. And I guess myself, like everyone else that works in this sector, encounters one main problem, which is the clothing waste that we face in warehouses because of a huge amount of donations that I've seen that in Ukraine, I've seen that in Morocco, I still see that in Greece, huge warehouses of clothes that are not distributed, either because they present stain or because they're inappropriate for the target population that they are intended for. So what I thought of doing was connecting with the local designer, a Greek local designer who's in vintage, like secondhand clothing. And I said, hey, I have a lot of clothes. You have the skills, you have the shop. I have a team of tailors, I have a team of designers. Why don't we come together and we bring these clothes back to life, and we give them a second chance without having them to be thrown somewhere in Chile or Ghana or somewhere? Like, how can we give life back to these clothes? So this was the designer. The major problem was the excessive amount of clothes that we find ourselves with in this context, and how to give life back to those, and why we want to solve this to avoid, because eventually it will go against us for the environment, climate change, and everything that comes with it. So this was the case study that I brought to the discussion.
Okay, that is great. Okay, so I'm excited about the next breakout, because then we're going to talk about solutions. So what about the other group?
Yeah, I think I can go. So I was thinking of a friend who was a luxury designer. And so he prints his art on fabric or he embroiders his art on these fabric. And so a lot of time in the sewing process, so he usually does make to order or he does like a collection and has these pieces in his studio. So the biggest challenge he faces is because his art is so unique and so loud and it's bold. So when he's getting all of these pieces sewed, there's a lot of scrap material that's left over, and he has a tough time figuring out what to do with that scrap material because he doesn't want to throw it away. But then he is also running out of space, like hoarding and holding on to all of these pieces. So kind of what should he do with this thing? He thinks that there's monetary benefit to it, but also it's like so personal because it's his art on fabric that it's so hard to let go. So I think those are the reasons why he would want to do something with it.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, so we can go to the next, past the next couple of slides and talk about the next breakout session. Keep going. Okay, so we're going to go into the same groups since you're familiar with your designer, and we are talking about their problem and what features on this platform would help them to solve the problem. So it could be anything from, hey, maybe there's just a directory of designers on there, or maybe it's a chat function where they can actually connect them directly, or maybe it's some type of artificial intelligence, if you're familiar with that, on how they can help to formulate their messaging to get, maybe creating videos or social media posts to get the message out of what they're trying to do or what they want to do. So the question is, what features would make this platform valuable to help them to solve the problem that you've identified, and then take a wider lens and say, well, for the entire industry, if we had to talk about the entire industry, what are some features that would help the entire industry, right? So those are two questions, and the same roles as the last breakout and same group as the last breakout. And so we'll take 10 minutes to do that. Okay, so right now everyone is in breakouts. They have about 3 minutes left. If you want to join a breakout, feel free. I'm sure you can still add to the conversation, but if not, you can hang out here. And yeah, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Yes, so as long as you registered, you should get a recording of the session. And then also I will put a link in the chat if you're interested in, attending a workshop in the future. This is the first of a series that we'll do. So you can also register here. And if I have your email address, I'll send out information to you about additional workshops that you can participate in. And also, if you are interested in the Catalyst 2030, Sustainable Fashion Collaboration, and if you're a member, you can go look in the portal, or you can actually email Lana and basically it's a group, and we get together and talk about what we're working on and different updates in sustainable fashion. So we do a lot of collaboration within that group. Okay, so we have probably a little bit over a minute before they come back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. And same as before, if you took notes, please add them to the chat so we have that record of it. And we are coming up on, maybe we have like 10 minutes left. So we can quickly share and then we'll close it out with a question and some words from Catalyst 2030. But if someone from each group could share, kind of what you came up with in your session. Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'm sorry. My computer is acting up, but yeah, the thing that we discussed, so we were thinking about like closing the loop, at least pre-consumer. So using this kind of fabric and creating, like my idea was just if you so luxury fashion is very expensive and not a lot of people can buy, and so when consumers come to the designer saying your stuff is expensive. So that's where I got this idea of like he can use the scrap material to create a lower end line, so slightly priced lower than his actual collection, but it's also using his fabric and like all of his scrap materials. So it's kind of like closing the loop in some small way. That's what we were thinking about, like I was thinking about at least for a solution, and that's what I shared in the group. And then I think we were thinking about like even then, I think the pricing point is just so skewed because something is selling for $10, but you're selling it for $50. So how do people buy into that? Because you have something you get for much cheaper. So I think it's hard to convince people to buy into something that's slightly more expensive. And then also like complete traceability of the supply chain from crop to the actual finished product is not something that people look at. So this designer friend, they only go back to their supplier who's printing their art on this fabric. And I don't think they go back to seeing where the crop comes from or like how is the fabric produced, etc. So I think those are kind of some of the things that you actually have to put in a lot of work to think about, because it's not just something that you put out and like close the loop in some way, because you have to think about all of these steps which lead to the final finished product.
Right. And so like as everyone's listening to this, possibly put in the chat like what would be some things that the slide I think is on the wrong discussion. But what would be some things that the platform, like a platform would be able to do to solve this issue, right? And maybe it's that traceability, right? Is how maybe there's some way to track what it would be, like what happens to, with the supply chain. But if you could put that in the chat as people are talking, that would be great. And then the other group, what was your discussion around?
Gloria from our group, she's from Catalyst Market, and then we were talking about, and she mentioned a very nice one, it's called Fashion Transparency Index. Because in the supply chain, like we expect that every actors in the supply chains like be well aware of the origin of materials and know the human cost and the environmental cost behind each products. And I think also mostly we mentioned about like how we know about the transparency and which tool, which criteria, how we can like access and use the criteria to avoid, nowadays just to avoid greenwashing.
Right. And that's a huge issue, right? Is that how do you know if this cotton is organic, actually. And how do you trace that supply chain and actually have that knowledge, right? And so how can we make that information open where you can have that assurance that it actually is? So this is great. And like we said, we could talk about this for so long. I'm going to put in the chat the links for if you're interested in doing additional workshops, because I love this, and I love it that you actually use real examples of people that are working on issues. And so we'll do additional workshops in the future, probably maybe a little bit longer, so we have more time to talk about these different things. So feel free to drop your information at that link, and we'd love to have you as part of this process. And I'm also going to put a link to the Sustainable Fashion Collaboration at Catalyst 2030. So if you are a member, you can go and look up the collaborations in Catalyst 2030 and request access via the member portal, or you can email Lana at Catalyst 2030, who helps to coordinate that collaboration. So I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you so much. I'm sure I'll see you around Catalyst in the future. And I'm going to hand it over so we can kind of close out the session.
Thank you, everybody. I know we don't have much time left, but we would appreciate if later, Riku, can you drop in the chat box if you can share with us your feedback and your key takeaway from today's session. I know it's time passed so quick, and and from your personal network, if you know anybody who's doing great to, how to say, doing their best in tackling our current issues, so please don't hesitate to nominate them, because once a year we have the Catalyst 2030 awards for this. And one important, and we are happy to welcome Gloria from Catalyst Market here. Please don't hesitate to reach out and look for information on Catalyst Market, because it's one of the first community-owned non-profit marketplace, and now we have members from more than 45 countries. Don't hesitate to reach out to me and Catalyst Markets. We will drop this in the chat box for everybody. And also, if you haven't been a Catalyst 2030 member, please feel free to join and recommend it to your friends, to your network, because we can collaborate with a lot of actions in different sectors. And finally, yes, as I mentioned, and thank you, everybody. Thanks, Camila, for your facilitation, and thanks, everybody, for your participation. I wish everybody a great morning, great afternoon, and evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I assume that you saved the chat, right? Oh, wait.
I have a feeling it's
Yeah,
too
I
short.
think once we're done, the Zoom will export the chat automatically to the host. I think whoever arranged this
Yeah.
meeting, maybe Karen will have it. So I think you can ask Karen.
No worry, Camila, we will share with you for the chats one. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.